All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is finally here. It's the New Year's Day 6. It's the playoff. They're the best games, the best matchups, supposedly. With all these opt-outs here, who knows what kind of matchups we're going to get, but the potential on paper is fantastic. But the man who is got a potential New Year's resolution, maybe he'll give it to us at the end of the show, my co-host, Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Perhaps, these teams right here have all accomplished significant things this entire year. Really overperformed, played great, dominated opponents. Obviously, only 2 of these 6 games truly matter across the spectrum, unfortunately, because of we're not in a 12-team playoff and a lot of opt-outs. But the names, the pageantry of these big-time bowls really do shine true at this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just something special about the New Year's 6 bowls. Not to say that some of the other ones aren't fun. Like we talked earlier in our previous episode about the Pop-Tart Bowl and getting to eat the mascot of the bowl game at the end of it. That sounds like a pretty good time for me. But, you know, these are the ones that really have the mainstay, the ones that you'll puff out your chest and say, you know, we were X champion of whatever, we won X bowl game. It really is matter. And it can springboard you to a really nice run the following year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a nice trophy you put in your case. You say you won a New Year's Six bowl. Those things do carry some weight, recruiting not as much as NIL money, but hanging in that trophy case back at the office, it definitely pays off.
Yeah, and these usually have the better prize room. So, you know.
No, definitely.
Yeah. So, all right, folks, before we get rolling here, make sure before you help us out, hit that subscribe button right up there. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We're going to make sure we go through New Year's Day 6. But once we get a national title game, we'll be doing only one game, and you don't want to miss that episode there as we break down our national title game. And the fun doesn't stop there. The party keeps rolling. After college football season is over, we go to NFL playoffs and then slowly start working on some other stuff as well. We don't really have much of an off season, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, get notified, and visit spinnablesports.com. All right, Fresh, let's go to our first game of the week here with everything. This game is going to be played on December 29th. It's the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. It's the Missouri Tigers, a surprise team out of the SEC this year, going 10-2 on the season, and they're going to be facing an interesting Ohio State Buckeyes out of the Big Ten. They're 11-1. Only lost this year, coming to the University of Michigan. Right now, at time of recorded, this is a pick'em game. This spread has bounced all over the place. It opened up at 3.5. Fresh, you saw at 1.1. I saw at one point a place that had Missouri as a 2.5-point favorite. So the spread has kind of moved around a little bit. Over-under is set at 48.5 right now. Current opt-outs for this game. Ohio State has a couple. We are still waiting word on Travion Henderson. And also, we're waiting word on Marvin Harrison Jr. It looks like Abuka's playing. Julian Fleming, he's out of there. He's gone there. Cade Stover has opted. It looks like he's opted out as well. There's a couple other guys that we're still waiting. Denzel Burke is playing, which is a huge one for them. As for Missouri, there's not really a whole lot. Chad Bailey, he's out with an injury. It looks like maybe a few other guys are mulling around, but Missouri looks like they're going to be at full strength for the Cotton Bowl. Fresh, what you got going on for Ohio State, Missouri?
Well, I think this is an intriguing matchup, and early on, I think we all had looked at it, maybe Ohio State, if they didn't make the playoff, that they were going to all go in the portal or all opt out, and this game was just going to be like an exhibition for them. It really didn't mean much. And, with Harrison still not declaring, I think that's carried some weight. Obviously, Kyle McCord is gone, so we're going to get a real show a case of Devin Brown. But the rest of the guys in the defense, for the most part, sort of hanging in there and have yet to declare or intended to play. It says something that what Ryan Day and that staff have sort of galvanized. You hope, at least if you're a Buckeye fan, galvanize the entire team to, we got something to prove. We played a tough game. We lost to Michigan. I get it. Move on. We had a couple close scares there on signing day, but we came through. We landed, a top 5 class. Now we need to go out in the field and prove that we are still one of the elite college football programs in the nation. Missouri, I think, presents a challenge where you can get up for it because, number one, we're always going to have the Big Ten SEC, battle back and forth on which is better, who's has more depth, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's a chance right now to for Ohio State to make a statement in a big bowl game, go out there and take care of business and shut down Missouri, who's had a pretty solid season, an upstart team with a very exciting offense. Look back the past 2 years when Ohio State has not made, in the first game after losing to Michigan, they go into the Rose Bowl and they put on a heck of a show. Defense struggled, but they put on a heck of a show and pulled away from Utah. And then last year, a classic, unfortunately, 1-point loss. If you're a Ohio State Buckeye fan, if you're a Georgia fan, you're happy. But a thriller in the Peach Bowl in the playoff. The team responded both times to play. And that, I think, I got a feeling we're going to get the same kind of effort because there's something that's on their shoulder of we are better than what we looked in that last game, and we're going to come out here and play with everything we got. With that said, are some of the players not fully motivated? Like you might come out there in the first couple of half, but if it's a ball game where it gets tough, do some of the guys just like, what, pack it in, whatever. I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. will. I don't think Ibuka will. But you sort of, where's that team's focus fully there? Early on, they might be jacked up, but if it becomes a ball game or they're down, do they sort of pack in like, whatever, it's not a playoff game. We've seen it many years since the playoffs had been involved where a team that's right on the cusp, you get one or the other when it comes to that next bowl game. You get a team that's really pissed off and they come out, guns a-blazing, if you will, and light it up because they are mad that the committee left them out. And then you have the other extreme where they completely out there and lay an egg. They're not focused. There's no in between. So what kind of Ohio State team is going to come here? What does Ryan Day have with this football team? I think with guys right now still have yet to declare, I think that's a good sign that they're locked in and totally focused on what they need to be going forward. Missouri, I have a feeling they're going to come in this game a little amped. This is a huge deal for Missouri. We kind of talked about 8-4 for one team and 8-4 for the other. One's a success and one's a failure, depending on the program and their record. This is a big, big deal for Missouri. Will this team be overamped? Will this team be in awe of being in the Cotton Bowl and playing Ohio State, playing on the 29th with everyone watching? Will that be a little too much for Brady Cook, for Luther Burden, for Schrader, for that defense when the lights are bright? Or will they, will they come on adrenaline in the first quarter and then once they get settled in, they sort of just play normal football, maybe make a couple of mistakes, a little too much jittery in the beginning? That's kind of what I'm also looking at from that. How does Coach Drink keep this team focused for the full 60 minutes, not too over the top when they come into the ballgame? They have talent. They've shown it. They played a tough game, and they kind of lost it late versus LSU. They played Georgia to the wire 2 years in a row now, lost by 9 in Athens, but they played a heck of a ball game. There's a lot of talent, and these guys are fully locked in. They're bringing some kids in the portal. They've done a great job recruiting for next year going forward. Can they use this as a springboard? I think both. I think their offense is going to have to carry them in this ballgame because they are playing a very solid Ohio State defense. The offense is going to have to be very efficient for Missouri. If they turn the ball over or have a couple 3 and outs, I think that will give Ohio State a lot of momentum. You've got to be able to keep the drives going, keep Ohio State's defense at bay, and find ways to score touchdowns. Field goals will not beat Ohio State. On the other side, Ohio State, a lot of ins and outs. Devin Brown, first real actions in a while. This team, come out there, get an early lead. Play loose. You have nothing to lose. If you lose the ball game, you can say, well, whatever. You have a built-in excuse of like, whatever. We're not in the playoff. It doesn't matter to us. But you also have, Ohio State pride in the line. Come out there, get after it, put the pressure on Missouri. If you score some points, you put them on their back heels. You may have them look over their shoulder a little bit. Maybe get them start thinking that maybe they're too big for the ball game and they're not where they're supposed to be. This is the battle of the big boys. Devin Brown, though, be calm. Don't try to, get too much in the moment. Use your legs. You are much more of a mobile quarterback. Use your legs a little bit in the perimeter. Run the football. Get your ball to your running backs. And also, without goes without saying, get the ball to Harrison Jr. as much as you possibly can if he's playing. You have the talented horses on the outside. Use them. You have the offensive line. Use it. Punish it. Ryan Day, the past 2 times you've come out in a bowl game, you've coached great, and you coached focused. Don't coach scared in this ball game. You have the depth. You're Ohio State. You've recruited for a while. You're bringing in top 5 classes every year. Test the depth. This is actually a challenge for your entire team. You're more than just the 1 or 2 guys that are opted out. You have a full squad. Challenge the guys who want to develop and get better. This is an opportunity. Use this as a springboard for next year and to build this program beyond it. Because obviously, 12-team playoff, you have a lot more momentum going in. Where is your mindset? I think you have a chance right now to keep building forward. The Ohio State brand is huge. Obviously, it's legendary, and you can't lay a dud in this ball game because you will hear about it. play tough, play focused, drive it after it, get after Missouri. Don't give them an inch. Attack early and often. Do what you did against Utah. Do what you did against Georgia in the past two bowl games. Get after them. Don't give up against Missouri, because if you come in there and lay down, that team's going to have energy and they're going to be excited to be there, and they'll take advantage of it and they'll let them go. I have a feeling this will be a pro Ohio State crowd. It's in Texas. Missouri fans are going to be great, but I think Ohio State fans, they still travel. And Jerry World is an experience that Ohio State hasn't had yet. So those fans will actually want to get down to Dallas and fill that stadium up. So take advantage of the crowd, keep them involved, get after it. Don't give Missouri an inch. In the end, I think Ohio State has that chip on their shoulder, and they're going to be the tougher team when it comes down to it. They have a better defense, and they have something to prove, I think, and they're going to come after it, and they're going to get it done, and Ohio State will win the Cotton Bowl, and they will take out Missouri.
Yeah, Fresh. This is an interesting, very, very interesting matchup, because I looked at a couple of guys, especially on Missouri. Missouri's been the upstart team of the season here. And one of the things that they've done is, while we've gotten so used to Ohio State being this high-powered, run and gun offense that's throwing the ball all over the place, this year Ohio State was really led by that defense. Jim Knowles, the story on Jim Knowles for years has been year 2 in his defensive system, it really kind of starts to take off. Year 1, you see those changes, you see the improvement on the defensive side of the football, but it's year 2 that the takeoff really starts to happen, and that's kind of what we saw this season. I'm curious on seeing how the Ohio State run defense matches up against a Corey Schrader type of player. Schrader right now, 5 100-yard plus games. He just ended the season against Arkansas with a 200-yard game. He's got 5 of his last games, 6 out of the last 7, and 7 out of the last 9. He's crossed the century mark. That's an impressive job out of him. How does Ohio State's run defense match up against whatever Missouri is going to try to do running the football? Whether they saw something from the game at the end of November, something that they were able to see, like, hey, Blake Corum was able to run the football against Ohio State in this type of look. And where they have these extra bowl practices where you can put in a wrinkle, where you can put in something a little bit different that's not the week in, week out where you go, this is our system, this is our grind, this is an opportunity for them to kind of throw something differently. That's definitely a matchup I'm watching throughout this. I want to see, because it looks like majority of Ohio State's defensive line is going to be playing in this game. We still haven't heard about JTT yet at time of record, so maybe, hopefully, we'll get clarity on him within the next couple of days. But I'm interested to see how Missouri's offensive line versus the Ohio State defensive line, that matches up. The other matchup that I'm really fascinated by is going to be Denzel Burke versus Luther Burden. That is a game changer of a matchup right there. Luther Burden, probably one of, I would say, easily, arguably the top 3 wide receivers in the SEC this past year. He's done a phenomenal job over there in Missouri, and especially with the idea that, Missouri wasn't expected to do this. He kind of burst on the scene. He had a lot of really big games, a lot of really big catches for the Tigers. I'm interested to see how he matches up against Burke. It's going to tell us a lot about both players. Burke is going into the draft this year, it looks like. So is Denzel Burke a first-round pick? He has an opportunity to put some really good highlights on tape right now if he goes toe-to-toe with Luther Burden. I'm not saying that he's going to shut down Luther Burden. I'm saying that if let's say he holds him to 4 catches for 39 yards in the game. I mean, he still has, a couple of catches where he does pretty well. You could see a difference in there. You can start to say, man, this kid's got some real talent, and really improve his draft stock here. In the end, I think it's going to get real interesting with what's going to be the difference between this Ohio State offense with Devin Brown leading the charge over Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord, he's out of there. No need to kind of talk about him much more on this season. He's now the starting quarterback over there at Syracuse. Devin Brown, much more mobile, much more athletic quarterback. He's getting rave reviews out of these bowl game practices. But kind of, as I said to Fresh, what are coaches going to say? They're going to rave about him. They're going to say all the right things here. We want to see it on the field, and we need to see it against Missouri. This is going to tell us a lot going into spring practice for Ohio State. If you're an Ohio State fan, it's going to tell us, is Devin Brown the guy? Do you need to still go out? There's a lot of big names still hanging out there in the transfer portal. Or are you going to have a opportunity to go with a true quarterback competition with Kleinholtz, Brown, and Aaron Nolan going into the spring, going into 24 here? A lot of things there. Travion Henderson, he needs a big game because there's possibility talk of him coming back right now. So there's a lot of things going on here with Ohio State. Very intriguing storylines. And Missouri is looking to set themselves up for a big-time run in 24. This is a team that if they stay together, and it looks like Missouri is going to keep majority of their pieces together going into next year, this team is looking for an opportunity to get one of those at-large bids once we go to the 12-team playoff here. One thing, last note, before I go on past this and give you my pick for this game, let's say Harrison does opt out in this football game. We're still waiting word on that. I think he's going to probably opt out. I don't know what he's going to have to play for this game, especially I think that he should go NFL draft. I point back a couple of years ago to the Rose Bowl where Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave opted out of the game. And in that Rose Bowl, C.J. Stroud threw the ball all over Utah's defense. While we had known the name Jackson Smith and the Jigba, he really balled out and showed out in that football game. And Marvin Harrison Sr.'s son balled out in that game. He wasn't Marvin Harrison Jr. that we know now. He was Sr.'s son, and he was on Ohio State. And that was kind of his coming out announcing party. Is this an announcement party for a guy like Carnell Tate? Is this an announcement party for a guy like Brandon Innes? One of these young wide receivers that have been a 5-star wide receiver, they're uber talented. Is this an announcement game for them? I think it's going to be an interesting football game. Give me Ohio State. I like Ohio State by a field goal. I think this game's close. I think Missouri is going to keep with Ohio State. In the end, I like Ohio State's defense a little bit better than Missouri's offense. So give me the Buckeyes. Give me the Buckeyes by, I would say 4 right now is where I kind of feel comfortable. And that 48 right there is a little low for me. I got a feeling the over is going to come in on this one.
Yeah, I got a feeling offense will tick up lately, and especially in the second half.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our second bowl game here. It is the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Thank God it's not played on a Sunday. It's the Ole Miss Running Rebels, or the Ole Miss Rebels. They're 10-2 out of the SEC. They're matched up against the Penn State Nittany Lions out of the Big Ten. They're 10-2. Both these two teams, 10-2 teams. Interesting. Ole Miss's 2 losses on the year. 2, Alabama and Georgia. Penn State's 2 losses on the year. To Ohio State and Michigan. Both of these teams have marquee losses. Fresh, me and you are split on this game for different reasons. I'll let you go first. Let you talk about why you think one way or another. Right now, spread of this football game is Penn State by 3.5. Over-under for this game as well is set at 48.5 points.
Well, folks, my most overrated team in the country is Penn State. Haps' most overrated team in the country is Ole Miss. This is actually a perfect game. And actually, it would have been one of those games that have been fun to go to, just sort of we can, chant overrated 24/7. Penn State's offense has, we've always talked about for the entire year, 2 solid running backs, and Drew Allar coming in was supposed to be the guys who take the next step this year and really turn this Penn State offense into something that would really compete with Ohio State and Michigan. And that is everything extremely far from the case. They've been okay and above average versus terrible teams and average teams. But in those 2 games versus Michigan and Ohio State, they were major duds and no-shows. Offensive coordinator even got fired for it. James Franklin, when are you going to get this offense under control and show us something? Your defense is solid. Not going to deny that. It's really, really good. But your offense against teams that have quality is putrid. And that is going to hold you back. Even a 12-team playoff going forward with Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA now in the league. Plus, we have a competent coach up there in Michigan State. Wisconsin's been recruiting. Nebraska's been recruiting. Your ability to get into the playoff is going to be stretched a lot more now. I think you kind of maybe even choked a little bit and blew your opportunity by not beating Michigan and Ohio State and getting yourself a chance to play for a Big Ten title. Last year, you were gifted a Rose Bowl when you finished 3rd, and both teams made the playoff. This offense is holding it back, and eventually, Nittany Lion fans are going to start looking at you as the head coach of why this team is being held back and why this offense is not performing at a high level. And you might say I'm just spooting out there and just saying stuff randomly, but you are 73rd nationally in yards per play. You average 391 total yards a game. That's behind Middle Tennessee State and right above Illinois. That is 60th in the country. Can you actually score consistently? Can a quarterback in that offense show up against good teams and put points on the board and get you over the top? That's what I'm stressed about. It's great that you put up 31 on Iowa and you shut them out. Congratulations. Perfect. Whatever. Who cares? We all know Iowa can't score and eventually they're going to roll over. You put up numbers against Rutgers. Great. Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, whatever. Like, who cares? You have not done it against legit teams that actually matter on the spectrum. That's what I want to see consistently from you, and I haven't seen it yet, and it's going to continue to hold your team back, and it really held them back this year because, honestly, I think Michigan and Ohio State, of all the years, this is probably, at the time you played them, the most vulnerable they could have been for you to get them, and you still had no way. You couldn't even compete. So something's got to change there in Happy Valley offensively. Your defense is fine, and with Manny Diaz gone, who knows what that's going to happen, but your offense has got to get better. Drew Lar's got to be better. Your running game's got to be better. I don't see big-time five-star receivers want to go to Penn State to play for your offense. That right there should tell me when you're recruiting and these receivers are looking at Penn State like, no, not a chance, bro. That's a problem. You aren't even getting the high-quality offensive players on the perimeter to come play for you. You've got to evolve your offense. The old days of 3.5, 4 yards of cloud of dust and a play-action pass game are done. You've got to find ways to have more of a pro-style vertical pass game and mixing in the run. And right now, that's not present in Happy Valley. And if you playing an Ole Miss in this ball game and they're a high-powered offense, everybody back, you're going to have to score some points. Will your running game show up? Will your passing game show up? Will Drew Lar lay a dud? That's what I'm looking at in this ball game. On the other side, Ole Miss. Will you actually show up in a big game? You know, Haps, you mentioned the loss to Alabama and the loss to Georgia. You completely no-showed in both of them. You went to Tuscaloosa, your offense no-showed. You went to Athens, you got blown out. We've seen this before every year. 2 years ago, you had Matt Corral, the same kind of thing. Everything looks good. You go and play Alabama, you get smoked. If you had a defense, maybe a defense more consistent across the year, maybe a little bit better. You find maybe one of those games you could at least slow them down, but you're still not at that level of playing an elite spot. Can this game be your final breakthrough game where you can actually beat an elite defense and win a big game? Just today or yesterday, Lane Kiffin came out and said, the reason why I'm in the portal is I'm finding dudes at the line of scrimmage who can actually play because right now my offense and defense, especially the line of scrimmage, does not have length, does not have dudes who can actually get after it. We got speed, we got playmakers, but we don't own the line of scrimmage and we're getting destroyed there, and that's why we're losing. He's like, I love my own team, but I don't have the guys at the line of scrimmage to get over with. Will that be a factor? Are the linemen on the team right now today going to show up and take on Penn State? Penn State's front seven, especially on defense, those guys are hogs. They're going to get after you. They're going to hit you in the mouth. They are big dudes. They will fight. So the reason why it's called linebacker U, they churn guys through there all the time. This is a challenge for Ole Miss and that offensive line, that offensive staff to be tougher. Who is going to own the line of scrimmage in this ball game? Who is tougher? Who wants to be in Atlanta in this bowl game? Is this a blessing for Penn State? I think it's for them. Whatever. It's not the Rose Bowl. Is it a blessing and a want to be there for Ole Miss? Are you happy that you are the third or fourth SEC team, depending on where you want to rank Missouri, and getting them in this ball game? This is a statement game, I think, for both, and I'm not sure who actually wants to be there. It's going to be a weird game. It's going to be a noon kick. I think Ole Miss is a little more hungry, but I just don't know if they're going to be the disciplined team enough. They have too many penalties. They get ahead of themselves. They're all on the lane train thing, but when it gets down to it, I don't think that they are focused enough 24/7 to actually win a big ball game like this. And that's kind of why I think I'm going to go with Penn State. I think Penn State's defense will be enough. Their offense will probably not score enough, but the defense will keep it within reach and get some stops to get them off the field. I actually think it's going to be a very low-scoring ball game. I'm taking the under, but I think Penn State will win. We're going to get more like a 20-10, 23-13 ball game. I think Penn State's defense will show up and play tough, but their offense will struggle to score points. And it will leave Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss staff scratching their heads on why they're struggling. And going into next year, it might actually temper some expectations for all the momentum they have right now in the transfer portal. But Penn State will win in a very defensive-oriented football game.
Fresh, we've had a lot of conversations off air about these two teams, and I'll be honest with y'all. Ole Miss, to me, is like the shallowest of football teams when I say this. And I say that with the idea of like you see, you know, a person who's absolutely stunning and then realize they have zero personality when you get to know them. And that's kind of what I feel like with Ole Miss is that they look great against well lesser opponents, but then the minute they face anyone with any type of respectable defense, they go into their shell and are just awful. Like they can't do anything. Take a look at against Alabama, 10 points in that game. 10 points. And Georgia, you get boat raced. 17 points in that game. And even though 17, like that 17 is generous in that game. I even point out to something like Mississippi State. Like you're on the road against Mississippi State. I get it's a rivalry game, but you didn't get to 17 until very late in that football game. Jackson Dart threw for under 100 yards in that football game. And Lane Kiffin is supposed to tout himself again as this great offensive mind, as this amazing. Yeah, you put up a 73-cent spot against Mercer. Phenomenal. Good job out of you. Vanderbilt, you won 33-7. The crap that is Auburn right there, 28-21 in that football game. This is my problem with Ole Miss. And it sounds like I'm just hating on Ole Miss, and you guys can say like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know Ole Miss football." Man, I think Quashon Judkins is one of the best running backs in college football. I think the offensive line play, just like Lane Kiffin, I don't think he's wrong. I think he's spot on. Quashon Judkins should be running all over people, and he's averaging 4.4 yards a carry, and he's got a long of 40 on the season. That means you're not opening big enough holes for him. That means that he's not like really breaking it past the second level. Your offensive linemen aren't engaging a linebacker and being able to get those longer runs, those 7-8 yard runs there. 15 touchdowns on the year. The kid's a beast. I mean, this kid is a beast. You gave him 237 carries on the season, and he will throw you on his back and carry you to victories at times. But I just really, really need to see more out of him against higher end competition. The one good thing for Ole Miss, there's very limited kids right now, as we're recording this, have been opted out, especially for Penn State. Chop Robinson has opted out as of right now, what the report I got here. That's a big time loss for Penn State. I know he was dealing with some injuries, so he may not have been even fully healthy for this one. So he may not have even played, and that's why he's kind of opting out of it. But, man, that's a big win for them. As for Penn State, for me, we continue to talk about Katron Allen. We've talked about Nicholas Singleton. It's big for them. And you're right, Fresh. Drew Allar has not had that stud wide receiver this season. He hasn't had someone that you just like, man, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. They're looking more and more actually like Utah for me, because you take a look at what they do with the tight ends, with the defense that they have. They have a good quarterback who doesn't make a lot of mistakes, only one interception on the season from Drew Allar. He's only taken 14 sacks on the year. I wish that completion percentage was about 5 points higher. I'd feel really good about him if he was. But the one thing I liked about Penn State this year, outside of the running game, and again, Allen and Singleton, in my eyes, are still beasts. Like, those are two really, really good running backs that 98% of the college world, maybe 100% of the college world, would take either one of those dudes on their team as a running back. Like, I know, Fresh, Georgia's got running back questions going into 24. If you picked up Allen or Singleton in the portal, would you not be stoked? If they
Well, I
entered it,
think I prefer getting ETN over one of the 10, but hey, any kind of running backs,
right? But
they'll be
if you,
fine.
yeah, but if you got Allen or Singleton there, you'd be like, oh heck yeah, this is going to be good. You might like ETN
Yeah, I
too,
mean,
but those two guys are
they are
awesome,
very good running backs. They are very good running backs, and they
right?
are underused at Penn State.
Yeah, and that's kind of even how I feel. Like, I love Travion Henderson as an Ohio State fan, but I've told people before, like, if Allen or Singleton wound up as a Buckeye, I'd be doing backflips and cartwheels, and I can't do those. So I would also say, like, same thing. I would say the same thing with Ole Miss is Judkins. If I wound up with Judkins, oh my God, I'd be over the moon. I love that kid. I think he's just a phenomenal player. So I'm not hating on Ole Miss for their talent. I think my thing is more of the defensive side of this. I'm with you, Fresh. Give me Penn State to win this football game. I think they're going to be up for it. I think James Franklin needs this win. And I think Lane Kiffin has kind of mailed in the 23 season. I don't want to say, because of everything he's doing in the portal, with everything he's saying, their focus is now moved completely to 2024.
I'll give
They're
you that.
gonna they're gonna look at this game and go, we're using this game for practices and going up against a team that we don't see very often. That's great for us. Win, lose, whatever happens, we don't care about that. We're setting up for 24, not for 23. Penn State, they need this for their 23 season. They lose this, and then what you can really say, I mean, Penn State's
All
best
three
win.
ranked teams are
Right.
losses.
What's Penn State's best win? Week 1 versus West Virginia, probably.
Yeah,
Maybe
you can't say it's Iowa.
Iowa.
You can't say it's
Yeah.
Iowa. Iowa's terrible, and Iowa has no reason being ranked. I think they were ranked by the committee to boost up Michigan or Ohio State, whoever won that
Right.
game in the championship game. But it's West Virginia week 1.
Yeah. The only thing I would give Iowa is at least you put up 31 on their defense, and their defense was good, but their offense was putrid. So that's the only thing I could say about that. But again, I'm with you. I'll go week 1 with West Virginia. So give me Penn State in this football game. I think they need it a whole lot more than Ole Miss needs it. So I got Penn State, and I got Penn State. I'm going to say this game's close, though. Give me it by, again, I like that 4 or 5 point range. I think that's a really good number. But I'm with you. I got a feeling the under's coming in.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very slow, methodical ball game. Just both teams trying to get through the ball games, as healthy as they can. One team gets a trophy, one team doesn't. They have a good time in Atlanta, and they move on to 24.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to our next game here. This one is the Capital One Opt-Out Bowl. I'm sorry, Capital One Orange Bowl. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. They're 12-1 out of the SEC, and they're going to face maybe former ACC member here shortly. I don't know. That's a lot of money they got to pay for that. The Florida State Seminoles, they're 13-0. And right now, at time of record, Georgia is a 13.5 point favorite. Over under is low in this game, though. That was kind of shocking. 44.5 right now. There's been, Fresh, you'll probably have a little more information on Georgia. I don't know if Brock Bowers has opted out yet.
Bowers and McConkey have yet to make a comment. Honestly, from my personal opinion, and also being a diehard Georgia fan, you've done enough. Sit it out. Worry about your future. You've given enough to the Bulldogs. You can opt out. No one will think anything less of you. You were playing through injuries all your entire career.
Yeah. And Florida State, obviously, we know the Jordan Travis situation. They have not mentioned anything about Benson or Coleman yet, but Johnny Wilson has opted out.
Coleman and Benson were not. Yeah, Coleman, Benson, Verse, the Wilson. They're all not playing.
They're all out.
Bell's out. Bell's out. Bell's opted out too. Like they're almost a good chunk of all the starters are not playing.
This is the fun thing that we have here, guys. Like we're always looking for, okay, where's the news report, and interesting thing. Fresh, this game, this could go. I'll let you go first here, real quick on this. To me, this game could go one of two ways. I think Georgia is in a lose-lose situation, and I think Florida State is in a win-win kind of situation. So I'll let you go ahead, though, first.
Well, I think first off, Georgia has to blow out Florida State. Because if they win close, then it's, well, you're not that great, or you actually proved you weren't worthy to be in the playoff, or it shows that it also is a Florida State thing of, well, then Florida State definitely should have been, and they shouldn't have been here. And they are ranked at 5 for a reason, year 6. On the other side, if Florida State gets blown out, it's a no-win situation for them either, because if they get blown out, it's like, well, see, we told you it was going to happen, but then you have the excuse of, well, all of our players aren't playing. If Florida State loses close, the exact scenario is set, and if Florida State wins, then I think that's even more of them going after the committee of, we did it without 11 starters. I'm just going to use a random number there. And Georgia's terrible. The SEC overrated, blah, blah, blah. So there's all these weird storylines come into play in this ball game, which are extremes that no one really wins, and everyone kind of loses. we're losing out on a great game because all these players have opted out. So you're always going to have the emptiness of the ball game. You have the overlying of, man, both these teams actually should have had, they have legit arguments, both cases, to be in the playoff. How does number 1 go to number 6, and how does an undefeated conference champion both get left out? You have your different scenarios, but with the 14 playoff, we all knew this was going to happen. It's also fueled or reignited the Florida State to leave the ACC argument. As we know, as time of record, they have set for meetings to start that exit strategy and exit plan. How much is that going to cost them? Is Clemson coming with them? Is it a 2-team thing? The SEC already said they're not taking anybody. The Big Ten has already said we're going to stop expansion right now. So what does it leave you? The AAC? You're going to go to the American, or you go to the Big 12? This is a weird thing, and maybe the ACC needs to invest in themselves a little bit more and take a little more of their brand from a football perspective. But I think the damage is so far done from what they have done already at this point that Florida State and Clemson are just going to try to get out. And where are they going to go? How is it going to hurt their brand? Is the Big 12 truly better for them? What does that do to the ACC as an overall brand itself? Does that entire thing just destroy and collapse? And do we get closer to a 2-conference solution? So a lot is hanging in the balance because of what has happened in the past month. And this ball game is more of just a sideshow for all the events that have happened. From a Georgia perspective, I think that they are angry they didn't win the SEC. Carson Beck is coming back. They're kind of refocused, maybe recharge, use this our practice to really understand and not let that happen again, even though they've lost to Alabama, a couple times, and past 2 SEC title games they've appeared, they've lost, and they struggle there in Atlanta versus Alabama. Where does this put Kirby Smart? Is this more of a Saban revenge tour, if you will? This is the starting of that. Is this a way to test out the players of who is ready to step up and take that next spot and lead that next group going forward? Can you keep motivating the team? I think years back in 18, when they lost to Alabama in the SEC title game and they went to play Texas and Texas beat them. Was it 18? That was 18. That team did not look motivated to play, and they got beat. You didn't see that reoccurring. You saw the team come into the bowl game a little more focused. I expect to see the same in this ball game, where Kirby and that coaching staff testing the entire team, testing the depth of who wants to be there, even with guys who have left or opted out. Florida State side, Mike Norvell, this is a big test for you. You had a lot of your top players who have carried you this year because last year you had a lot of success. We saw it building. This year, obviously a tremendous amount of success. Those guys aren't there. Where's the depth of this Florida State football team? You past 3 years, on signing day, you had leads on some very elite players, and you didn't close on any of them for one reason or another. Where's this depth? The roster has truly been built through the transfer portal. How do you get your homegrown talent to step up and take the next step here going forward? Well, are you a one-year wonder? Are you going to let your team pout? Or is your team going to show up with the depth and at least try to compete? You're probably already playing with a little more of a deficiency in talent-wise right now at the depth in the development spot. But will your team actually compete versus Georgia and show that you want to be there the whole, or you can completely come in there and lay down? I think it's a bad look. We've heard this rumor of protest it, don't play the game, just show up for warm-ups and not come out. What does that do? Because you know what? There are kids who actually want to go out there and compete. Go at least play the ball game. You're going to have to play a game. It sucks. Both these teams are in the same situation. Show up and play some football and try to get after it and compete in this football game wherever you have depth. So Tate Rademacher, give them a chance to go out there, show what you got. Who's in that second and third, that fourth receiver? Who's the depth at running back, the depth offensive line? Where do you guys come out there and want to compete and play football and not feel sorry for yourselves? Because if you do, you're going to get embarrassed on national television, and that's even going to hurt the entire program, I think, going forward, and maybe even hurt the validity of, well, you know what? Your biggest game, yeah, you had guys opted out, but you got run over. Maybe you aren't a truly elite program and you beat up on a bad ACC. Where's the Florida State mentality? Do you guys show up and actually try to compete in this ball game? Make it interesting. Show there's more than just a couple players. Obviously, this is going to be a tough one for Florida State to win. I think no matter how much they compete, how much they show up to play, but at least give us a ball game. Show up there and come out there and play. In the end, I think Georgia's going to win. I think they covered the 13.5. I think they just have too much talent, and Kirby's a little irritated. It's going to drive them a little harder, and they've been running a little harder in practice. I just want to see Florida State at least give me a first half where you compete, and maybe the depth comes away in the second half. Don't get the brakes beat off you right off the bat. That's not going to leave a good look for Norvell and that the coaching staff of showing what they have under control. And I think that's going to be more demoralizing going into spring practice for Florida State than anything else. Use this as a way to sort of show your test, show your development, get better, and compete. In the end, like I said, Georgia wins, takes care of business, and moves into 24. But Florida State, don't come in feeling sorry for yourselves because I can guarantee you Georgia's not. And you don't want to be embarrassed on national television.
I think this is, if Florida State goes out there and pulls those type of shenanigans, I'm going to laugh really, really hard because that's going to be hilarious to me. This is a tough situation for Georgia to be in. Because again, Fresh, as you kind of outlined there, I think they're in a lose-lose situation. The best thing that they would do, and I don't think Georgia's going to do this, but the best thing for them to do would be like a 56-0 type of game. Like they have to win. You can't win by 3 touchdowns in this game. And you need to win by it's just got to be an awful, like almost
30 plus domination.
Yeah. You got to turn almost where people, okay, yeah, I'm going to turn the channel off for this one. Because if Georgia doesn't do that, it's going to open up a lot of questions. Because and this is the tough part, because now when you, as I said last year to you, and I said this last year about Georgia, is that you are now, after winning back-to-back national championships, you are now the villain. You are now, everyone's looking for a reason to tear you down. And again, that could be a motivating factor for going into 24. Great. If that's what you can use for a motivating factor. But I'm going to tell you, it will annoy the living bejesus out of you if you got to hear 12 months of this type of talk here from the people that aren't Georgia fans, who are trying to tear you down. If Georgia loses this football game, the people are going to say it was a good group of kids that came through, as a great class, and that is a generational talent. And look what happens when they didn't have that type of talent. And it's same old Kirby Smart that he was a couple of years ago. If they win a close one, they're going to say, are they really that good? Are they good? Or was it, was the SEC down? Which I believe the SEC was down this year. It's okay to say that, folks. You've had a great run. You can have a down year here and there. Florida State, if they beat them, like, how in the world did you lose to Florida State? Like, all of a sudden, with all the people that are opting out that are backup quarterback, so Georgia's in a super tough position for this one. And
they have
I
to
think
do what they did at TCU, basically.
Right. And Florida State is in it. When I say they're in a win-win situation, I mean, if they get blown out, they get boat raced in this game, and it is, 56-0. I'm going to use that score right now for some reason. But if it's 56-0, then okay, then Florida State, yeah, guys, I get a bunch of your players opted out, but it shows that you didn't have the depth for this game. You didn't have the depth for the playoff that you would need to be able to compete with the big boys. And that's where it is like, okay, I guess that's a lose situation for them. And I think that's a problem with Mike Norvell. That's been the conversation with Florida State all year long, is they had great at the talent was there at the starter position. It was the depth that gave them some issues. It was the depth that was the guys who were in the 2 deep there, that were they really as good as the guys that were in the front line there. If Florida State keeps this game close, man, you can sit there and say, listen, look at what we did. They're still the back-to-back national champions until someone hoists the new trophy. We hung with them, with all these guys opting out, with our Heisman winning quarterback that should have won the Heisman if he was that important, injured. Come on. And then Florida State, if they win this football game, then, oh my gosh, like, what does that do to you? Saying, look, we should have been in the playoff. We can compete with the best. Florida State's in a unique position in this one. I think this is tough. Georgia's going to win this football game to me. Like, I just can't see Florida State having a path. I think it's idiotic. I think Florida State is kind of overplaying their hand. They had a good season this year. It sucks what happens to them. It sucks being left out of the playoff. We went back and forth. I disagreed with leaving them out because undefeated conference champ, you weren't playing with your third string. You're actually just playing with your backup in the playoff. But it is what it is. Can't change the past. Can't relitigate that whole rigmarole. So I think that Florida State really does have a depth issue in this one. So give me Georgia. I don't think Georgia's going to get to that 56 number that I'm talking about. I think that I think this game's going to be like a 31-10 type of game, 34-10. Georgia definitely covers the spread, but it's going to be interesting to see what the ripple effect is afterwards. What do people say outside of the Georgia fans? And again, Georgia fans, any Homer fan, regardless, any fan of the team, is going to be proud of whatever their team did in the bowl game. But it's a conversation.
The way you kind of look at it, when they beat Michigan, they thoroughly dominated, but they didn't drop 50 on them. They were up. It was the dominant first half, and they called off the dogs the second half. Like, if that's the difference in the game. Is it a dominant first half where you basically put the thing away, or you sort of walk it off in the second half, or does it take a while where it's a ball game all the way through the fourth quarter? That's where I think that 34-10, how you watch it, how the game is played out, is really the telling story.
All right, Fresh. Let's go to our next game here. I don't know how much we're going to have to say about this one here, Fresh. But we got to talk about
Fiesta.
But this is a near 6 ball game, so we better talk about it real quick. This is the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Tostitos. Pony up the money. Because this needs to be the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. It makes more sense as the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. But it's Verbo right now. Verbo, I think I don't know. I use them. They're great. But they're not sponsoring the show, so that's enough on me. You take a look at Liberty. They're undefeated right now. They are 13-0. Played nobody. Have one of the weakest strength of schedules all year long. Playing the Oregon Ducks. Quack, quack, Mr. Ducksworth. Oregon 10-2 on the year, or 11-2, sorry about that. 11-2 on the year. 2 losses, both to Washington. Opt-outs for this game are very intriguing because, Liberty's got some guys in the transfer portal here, and you take a look at what they got going on. You take a look at Bo Nix is playing in this game. Bucky Irving did opt out. Troy Clifford Franklin, our favorite wide receiver, he is not announced yet. Neither is Tez Johnson. We're looking at, there's some questionable guys. There's some guys that are in the portal. It's going to be interesting. Oregon's got a interesting road to go, but Fresh, I don't know about you. Like, what's the path? Maybe that's the better question. Is there a path for a Liberty win in this game?
Folks, Boise State, Oklahoma didn't want to be there. Boise State was a stronger football team across the board, a little more talented. Tulane, much more talented football team, took their energy, got after USC. Liberty played the worst schedule in the country. There are 133 FBS teams. They played the 133rd schedule. They did not play a Power 5 opponent all year. This is their first one, and they're getting Oregon. Now, remember what I think it's a long time ago, remember September? The hype around Colorado, and they were all this and all that, and they had to go to Eugene. And Dan Lanning basically got tired of seeing it, and they put it to the Buffs. I have a feeling this is going to be the exact same outcome and scenario. It is going to be an absolute bloodbath. There is no path for Liberty. The only path is that if the first and second strings for Oregon did not play in this ballgame. This is an Oregon team that is trying to build for the future, to make a statement about going into the Big Ten, make a statement about preseason rankings for next year, to be in the playoffs and sort of position yourself to announce that they are one of the top 8 teams, top 9 teams in the country. This is going to be a beatdown. Dan Lanning worked for Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. They don't take these games lightly. They take these games as a statement and a national appearance and a national audience. And I have a feeling Liberty, you might want to have prayed that the committee ranked you lower than, say, SMU or someone else who won their conference title and going to take in that spot, because you are going to enjoy your trip out there to the desert. And by kickoff, it's going to get ugly really, really quick. And this is going to show a major discrepancy in talent and football development across these both programs. It's great that Liberty's there. Fantastic season. You're undefeated. I do feel bad for Caden Salter. Quentin Cooley, and Daniels, the wide receiver. Your three big playmakers. You're going to have to put on a show. You're going to have to score every time you get the ball. It's going to be a completely different brand of football that you guys haven't played in a while, or even maybe in high school you got to play against a team with some solid D1 players. You're playing against a legit loaded squad here in Oregon, who in both cases almost beat Washington, who's playing for the playoff, and 2 3-point losses. This team that last loss is lingering with them, and I think they're going to take out their pain on you. I feel bad. The Liberty got this matchup, but I think anybody, if you had played Penn State, Ole Miss, Georgia, Florida State, any one of the other New Year's Six bowl games probably would be very similar setup. The talent depth is not going to be there, and the size at the line of scrimmage is not going to be there. And Oregon can make this ugly really quick. Again, great season for Liberty, but I really, really find it's almost impossible for them to have any kind of chance. They might have a lead in the ball game early, but they won't be leading in the second half or in the final score.
Fresh, I looked at this for a while, and right now Oregon is a 17-point favorite. Over under set 65 or 66.5. The only thing I can even think for Liberty is Liberty has 21 interceptions on the year. Bo Nix, when he was at Auburn, that last year is at Auburn, he had a tendency to throw interceptions. Bo Nix turns back the clock and turns back into Auburn Bo Nix and not Oregon Bo Nix, and throws 4 picks in this game. If that happens, I think that's the path for Liberty. If that, you have to have short fields. Like, you're not going to go on 12-play 80-yard drives for a touchdown in this game very often. You may get 1 or 2 in there, but you got to put some serious points up. Like, you got to be able to score at like almost a video game level to keep up with Oregon, especially in a game like this with Liberty. This just isn't fair. I mean, I get it. Liberty is undefeated. They're the one group of 5 team that was undefeated for this season. But Tulane would have been a better matchup. Boise was another one. Heck, before they lost in the MAC title game, I was pounding the table for Toledo. I thought Toledo would have been a much better matchup in this one. So I guess give Liberty their opportunity here. The thing I'm watching here, Fresh, Bo Nix, how does he go out? How does he raise his draft stock? He's not projected as a first-round quarterback. I don't even know if he's a second-round quarterback here right now. Is he able to kind of show out and put something else on tape that NFL scouts like? If Franklin plays, how does he ball out? But really the name that I'm most intrigued to watch for Oregon is Jordan James. He will be back next year. He's probably going to step into as the lead running back over Bucky Irving's not going to be back next year. You get a quarterback like Dylan Gabriel, backup quarter like Dante Moore coming in the transfer portal. So Jordan James is really the one that we want to see. What does he do for Oregon? But yeah, this is going to get ugly, quick, fast, in a hurry. I'll say this. Take the over here, folks, because I think Oregon's got a legit shot to hit the over on their own.
Oh, so yeah. Give me Liberty or give me death. Is I going to get a whole new meaning after this ball game?
Yeah, Liberty is going to be praying for death in that a running clock there. Hey, at least they get like a nice setup in
It'd be a nice
Tempe.
Bowl. Yeah, nice bowl, especially coming from Virginia, a little colder. You can get a nice little vacation out there in the desert. Like you said, the bowl week in the big bowls is a lot of fun. The gifts, the experience, it'll be something cool for them that they usually don't get.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so the time you have all been waiting for, let's go to the college football playoff. Hey, this is nice because a lot of guys aren't opting out in this football game. Our preview here, folks, is brought to you by Spinnable Sports, so make sure you go on spinnablesports.com. And let's jump into our first preview game. It's the Rose Bowl. It is at 5 o'clock on New Year's Day, so you should be able to have a good amount of time get some greasy food in you, whatever hair of the dog that you're going to need to recover from New Year's Eve, or just sleep it all off. You should be able to be good by 5 p.m. there. Alabama, SEC champion. They're 12-1. The Michigan Wolverines, 13-0 from the Big Ten. Right now, time of recording, Michigan is a 2-point favorite in this game. Over-under, I think this is a really good number for the over-under, is at 44.5 here, fresh. Listen, third time the charm, maybe for Michigan. This is not the same Alabama team that we've seen in years past, but I think this is a fascinating Alabama team this year.
Well, folks, as we all know, usually these playoff games, especially the first two, the semifinals, have been blowouts ever since the playoff really came into play. There's a handful here and there that have been really good games, but for the most part, they get ugly pretty quick. Last year, two classic games, and that sort of I think got everybody's attention where we had both the games that came down to final plays and really were prime TV and showed that maybe we actually had four legit football teams in the playoff bowl until the national title game. But you're going to be competing against an elite squad for the most part, and you've got to be ready to play. The last time Alabama won an outright national championship was 2020, not too long ago. COVID year, perfect, undefeated, whatever. The last time Michigan won an outright national title, not a split title, an outright national title, was 1948. The Korean War was still 2 years away. That shows I'm like I said right now, I'm not mad about it. Michigan football has been truly irrelevant from that perspective since the Eisenhower administration. Actually, that would have been the Truman administration. You win a bunch of Big Ten titles. Bo won a bunch of Big Ten titles, never won a natty. Terrible record in the Rose Bowl. Jim Harbaugh, you're almost identical. You have a couple Big Ten titles. You beat Ohio State. Everybody loves you. But on the national scale, you're 0 for 2 in the playoff, and you got embarrassed by TCU, and you got the brakes beat off of you by Georgia. This is your last chance. I think if you come here and get blown out in this ballgame, folks, I think Harbaugh leaves because he has not signed that contract. We heard all this talk about the contract. He's not going to let us talk to NFL teams. He hadn't signed the contract, folks. There's still a chance for him to run. And the notice of issues from the NCAA for the 2020 violations just delivered. They haven't even gotten to the 21 or the 23 Spygate stuff from Stallions. That's all coming. Does he want to wait around after losing 3 straight times in the playoff? The pressure's on Michigan to get this done. There's tremendous pressure. Your coach, you're already the fact that wasn't even qualified and all the allegations, and all your coach being suspended and getting to be still recognized as one of the best teams in the nation, but another school lost their quarterback and that was held against them. That's a problem that still sticks with me a little bit, where you're sort of being scapegoated. I mean, not scapegoated, but ignored for violations off the field to give you an athletic competitive advantage. But all that being gone, Michigan, when are you truly going to get back to being nationally relevant? Making the playoff is cute, but getting blown out just makes you more of a laughingstock. This game is more important for you than I think anybody else. You've got to show up in the Rose Bowl, and you've got to show up against Alabama and win at the line of scrimmage and try to win a football game. You're lucky this game is not in the Southeast, in Atlanta or Miami or anywhere else. You're in the Rose Bowl. It's obviously a massive stadium, and you have a chance to have a more of a balanced 50-50 or even a pro-Michigan crowd, which I think gives you a chance to have that extra crowd noise in big situations to help give you an extra little boost. You're going to need every little bit of it because Alabama, the mystique of Alabama is still there. Folks, that name, that logo, Nick Saban walking out there, if they're playing in a big game, you best be ready. They're going to be prepared to play football. They do not show up unprepared. Line of scrimmage is where Alabama has always dominated since Nick Saban's arrived. Offensive, defensive side of the ball, front seven, run the ball, line of scrimmage, protect the quarterback, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They own the line of scrimmage. They own the trenches. That's how they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game a couple weeks ago. They dominated the line of scrimmage. To win this game, if you're Michigan, you have got to be tougher at the line of scrimmage than Alabama. That's easier said than done. You've had your Georgia practice periods all year long or the past 2 years or whatever. This is the game you have to put them to use. You've done it through the Big Ten. You've played great football, and you've been able to beat Ohio State. Can you show up on the national scale and beat an SEC team, much less beating Alabama? If you can, then I think you maybe shake off the past 2 losses and it sort of saves and puts Michigan on a new light, maybe gives them a national spotlight. You know what? This is they're actually for real. If you lose again, nobody's taking you seriously ever again. I think the Big Ten getting more teams in there, the playoff times are tight is going to be a lot tougher. If Harbaugh leaves, things will get rougher. How do you manage the situation? How do you manage the expectations? How do you take advantage of this game that you're in right now? If you have a tight game, if you even play Alabama close and maybe lose late, I think you'll get more respect. If you get blown out again, like you did versus Georgia, this entire program, I think, at a core, will take a major hit. Transfer portal, people start leaving, people start, negatively recruiting Michigan, that they're all just frauds. These things will happen, and a lot's on the line. Where do you stand in this football game? Michigan is built to lead from ahead. They're built to run the football, play action, and then rely on a great defense. J.J. McCarthy and this offense is not designed to put 3 or 4 receivers on the field and throw consistently, especially when you're behind. They looked a lot of frazzled versus TCU last year in the playoff. They really struggled to get back in the ball game. They had ups and downs, but they actually never really got a chance to even lead the ball game. He did not look comfortable throwing from behind. They couldn't keep up with Georgia. Georgia beat the brakes off them. The pass game never held. They are not built to play from behind. You've got to get them down by 10 plus, especially in the second half. They are really not built to be able in the situation of playing from behind. That's what Alabama has to do, get after them. But that's what Michigan, if you can show that you can actually get after Alabama and lead from ahead, run the football on them, run with Blake Corum, run with Edwards, and use the passing game when you want to play, and you keep your own, dictate the offense, dictate the pace, you're going to be just fine. A lot easier said than done. But if you are down, I'm worried at Michigan's ability to throw the football to continue to get back in a ball game or stay in the football game. And that's where the big key is. How is this game going to be played out? Are you going to dictate to Alabama, or is Alabama going to dictate to you? In the end, it comes back to the line of scrimmage. Who owns it when it gets down to it? Alabama side, Milroe, you had some rough starts early in the year. You had some rough looks. You've gotten better. You're starting to feel more confidence. You got lucky versus Auburn, and we're going to say it. It was a miracle win versus Auburn to even get you in the SEC championship, get you in that momentum push to the SEC championship game and then go in there and beat Georgia. Where is it now? Is this moment going to be too big for you? Are you going to be able to be settled in playing out there in the Rose Bowl in front of 100,000 people on New Year's Day? It's a different kind of thing. Yes, you play in Tuscaloosa. There's a lot of people there playing for Alabama. Has a lot of expectations. But something about playing on New Year's Day in the Rose Bowl in a playoff game is a big deal. How will you settle in? Will you let the emotions get to you? Offensively, Burton, the rest of those receivers, are you guys ready for the moment? Can you come out there and keep actually developing and getting better every single week? Where's the running game out? And your offensive line, can you take it to that Michigan defense who has proven to be very good the past few years? Defensively, Kool-Aid, Dallas Turner, and the whole group on that side of the ball. Caleb Downs at safety. Are you ready? Are you tough enough? Can you shut down this Michigan running game and force them to throw? Can you put the game into McCarthy's hands where he has to drop back 35, 40 times in a ball game to throw the ball? If you can take out the running game and shut down Corum and Edwards, this game is going to be a cakewalk for Alabama because I think that pass rush eventually will get home. But it's, again, can you own the line of scrimmage? Can you own the line of scrimmage? Can you own the line of scrimmage? I'm not picking against Alabama. I can't. Alabama will win this football game. They will win by 10. It'll be a late fourth quarter pull away. Both these teams will be knocking at each other the entire game. I'm going to say it's going to be a 27-17 final, and Alabama advances to the national championship game.
All right, Fresh. If not now, when? We've said this before. This is the third time that the Wolverines have found themselves in the college football playoff. If they can't win this football game, and again, this win would mean a lot to the Wolverines because there's been some articles put out there about what team has been the best team in the 4-team college football playoff throughout the entire 10 years. And the answer to that question is Alabama. Alabama has been the flag bearer. They've been the gold standard since the 4-team playoff has come into play here. If the Wolverines want to be taken seriously, they got to beat the best team. They got to beat the team that has been that really has been the Dragon Slayer for all 10 years of this thing. It's interesting because this is not the same Alabama team we saw like win a national championship a couple years ago. They're not as good. When I say that too, that doesn't mean this Alabama team is bad. This Alabama team is, I feel, more rugged. I think the other teams that we've seen previously with Alabama will beat the brakes off you. They'll kind of just like go and just try to run up the score on you and try to get some quick, fast, scores. Don't get me wrong. You break a big play for the Tide, like go for it. Milroe's got a cannon attached to him. But this is more of like just kind of pounding. Alabama is just pounding after you, pounding after you, pounding after you until they really break a big one here. I think that this is something that the Wolverines really got to take into account for. I think this game is going to be close. I don't think it's going to be a 10-point win by Alabama in here. I think that there's a few areas. There is a pathway to a Wolverines victory in this. Really, it's going to come down to two players. Is Corum able to get his yards against the Alabama defense? Is he able to set J.J. McCarthy up into manageable passing situations? If Corum is able to do what we've seen him do all year long, he's got over 1,000 yards, 24 touchdowns on the year. Is he able to do what he needs to get done against Alabama? The one thing that is really never changed with Alabama this year, except for maybe you can kind of point at that Texas game, is that defense has still been an Alabama level quality defense. They're going to sell out. They're going to, I think Saban's a genius. He knows more and has forgotten more about football than I will ever know in my lifetime. This man will put the game into J.J. McCarthy's hands. He is going to figure out a way to bottle up Blake Corum, and especially, I think it's huge that the Wolverines are not going to have their all-pro all-pro guard, Zach Zinter, in the game. That's a huge matchup issue for them. If Corum is able to run the football where it doesn't go back in onto McCarthy's shoulders, when I say that, he's still going to have to make some big boy throws throughout this game. No matter what. Corum runs for $125 or $130 in this game. Great. That's all well and good. Even if he does that and McCarthy only has 6 completions in the game, it's not going to be able to, it's not a pathway to victory. McCarthy is going to have to make a big time throw here and there. But if Corum can make those throws manageable for him, if Donovan Edwards can make those throws manageable, where McCarthy can take advantage of a defense that's been kind of softened up, I think Michigan's got a shot at this thing. I think they do. I think no matter who wins this football game, I think this is going to be a close one. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. For the Tide, I think this is an opportunity for Jalen Milroe to kind of announce himself to the college football world. And I know that's going to sound weird about an Alabama quarterback announcing himself to the college football world, but people are going to be quick to forget that Milroe was benched early on this season. He wasn't the starter all year long. This Tide team went through some challenges very early on. They have that huge loss to Texas in there that really kind of, I think, galvanized them a little bit, but it also was a very shaky galvanization. You saw the boat rocking. You're like, is the boat going to capsize? But it's like everyone worked together to get the boat back to even keel. And it made them all come closer together because there's so much rocking back and forth. I think when I say Milroe's about ready to announce himself, I think he could be the Heisman frontrunner next year. I think if he has a big game, especially he kind of uses the college football playoff to be his announcement, and he makes this run through the field through the last year or 4, especially if Alabama winds up winning another national title. Ladies and gentlemen, Jalen Milroe is your Heisman frontrunner going into next year. He's going to be the betting favorite if he pulls this off and wins these 2 games, because there's a good chance that he may, in the national title game, get an opportunity to get a revenge against that Texas loss on neutral field. That'd be great. That's great for them. And Texas is not the same team that they have going through. We'll get talking to that if that kind of comes to pass here. But I'm with you, Fresh. Now, here's the other thing. I think that I'm with you. I have some problems with some of the things that the committee did, and I would lobby for the committee to, start asking fresh minds' opinion on these things. Start taking our opinion into consideration because you guys know that Fresh and I, we know football better than most of those guys. Folks, I'm being very facetious here. Don't just rip me in the comment section right there. But what I'm saying here is I'm with you, Fresh. I think that Michigan kind of got the benefit of the doubt in when other things weren't penalized, or Florida State got penalized where other people didn't get penalized. I don't know. Not totally accurate on this and there, but I think Alabama's going to win this football game. Give me the Tide by less than a touchdown. I think if the spread was at around the 6.5 number, I'd feel okay with it. But I got the Tide by right around a touchdown.
If Alabama wins the Rose Bowl, they win this game. Saban will be the first coach to win back-to-back games during the same season against two different number one ranked teams in college football history. If he hasn't already done enough, he'd be the
Back to
first in
back.
the same back-to-back games versus number one
Back
ranked
to
team
back.
in the same season.
Wow, interesting. And for all those people who thought is Alabama dead and buried this year, and we questioned them.
We
Listen,
did,
guys, we did, and
but
and
we had
I
him preseason number 4.
right, we didn't have them ranked high, and we prefaced it too, like we questioned them to Alabama standards. We didn't question them to all 130 other football team standards. We questioned them to their own standards that they set. And that's the crazy thing. Like when you are at the top of the mountain, when you are I would say top 5 or 6, I think we do this for like the top 5 or 6 teams. It's not a standard against all of college football because shoot, how many teams right now would love to be 11-1 or 10-2? That
Love
or
it.
they love it. Like if I was I don't know,
NC
the
State, 10-win
NC
season. Perfect
NC
example.
State, yeah, it's a great example. Yeah, NC State's a wonderful example. Thank you, Fresh. NC State 10-2 have opportunity to pick up their 11th win, or they're picking up their opportunity to pick up 10. I can't remember on that one.
They're 9 right now, trying to pick up 10. But if they were already at 10 wins, they had going for 11 or 12. That right there would be an ecstatic season, a greatest season in NC State football history.
Right.
Other people are 11-1, 10-2 already, and you're like, eh.
Yeah, and if Alabama went 10-2 this season, people would be like, "Oh man, look, we all told you Saban was done for." I'm like, it's comparing. You guys got to be like where you're comparing your expectations on these things. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our other playoff game. This is going to be at 8:45 on New Year's Day. If you haven't recovered already by the Rose Bowl, maybe hit up a Waffle House before it if you're going to watch the Sugar Bowl. This game is just uber fascinating to me. Texas Longhorns 12-1 on the season out of the Big 12. Their lone loss coming at the hands of Oklahoma. I won't go into the Oklahoma song this week. All right, against the Washington Huskies, they are the champions out of the Pac-12 that will be no more. Well, maybe it actually will. It looks like after the ruling recently, but the Washington Huskies, they're 13-0 before they join the Big Ten. Fresh right now, Texas is a 4.5-point favorite in this game. Over under is set at 63.5 points. I think this is the fascinating game. Like this is get your popcorn ready type of game here. Jonathan Brooks still out. Taking a look at some of the things right now. Backup quarterback Malik Murphy for Texas. He did start a few games this year. You take a look at him. He is in the transfer portal. Feel bad for that kid. This is a horrible thing for how the college football calendar sets up. There's a bunch of people who've talked about this. Malik Murphy, though, is in the transfer portal, means Archman is the backup for Quinn Ewers, who has gotten injured a few times this year. Jonathan Brooks is out for the year. I know that this time around, so all the Texas fans who would jump the comments like, tell me you don't know college or Texas football by telling me you don't know Texas football, whatever you guys say these days. So take a look at this game here, Fresh. Hey, you know the stat that we go, AD Mitchell has a touchdown catch. And
Market, folks. He's
yep,
catching a touchdown this ball game.
he is 10 on the year, man. What a great pick. I mean, it Georgia really could have used him. I wish he would have stuck around there, but man, pairing him with Xavier Worthy this year, maybe just as good as Keon Coleman being paired with Johnny Wilson in as a
Mm-hmm.
transfer pickup there. Interesting thing for them. Texas has done a really great job of getting out to a lead on a lot of teams. Washington's one of the first teams that I think like can Washington's got great wide receivers as well. Guys, don't sleep on Rome Odunze. Like that dude is legit. Like he is a legit, ridiculously good wide receiver. He is going to be a first round draft pick probably upcoming year. Polk and McMillan both had big games this year at certain times there. This is a great passing attack. And Fresh kind of called it earlier on this year. He said, watch out for a guy by the name of Dylan Johnson. And we were all kind of thinking that that was going to be the Achilles heel of Washington this year, was going to be their ground game. And then Dylan Johnson comes on the year, 14 touchdowns on the year, 5.5 yards per carry. This is a great matchup. I feel Texas has a little bit of an advantage at the line of scrimmage here, Fresh. I think they're a little tougher on that defensive front. They got some dudes on the defensive line. But we all kind of felt that way about, we thought Oregon was going to be, Dan Lanning had recruited some dudes to get after Penix Jr. And in that title game, he handled them. I've loved Penix all year long, man. What say you?
Well, this is also a rematch of last year's Alamo Bowl where Washington, I think, made their assertion and really said, hey, you know what, we're coming next year. They came in there, they beat Texas, and come full circle, here they are in another bowl game. I have a feeling Texas and Steve Sarkisian are going to remember that, but they also are going to respect Washington more. It's not like, well, you know what? It's Washington. They're coming from the Pacific Northwest, whatever. It's the Pac-12. Like, no, we played them last year. We lost to them in a bowl game. I understand what Penix Jr. is. He understands who the receivers are. He watched them in that first game. Where have they developed since then in the past year? Where are they at now? They're obviously an elite football team. And it also, sort of gives the players a mindset of like, we can watch film, but most of these guys who have been playing in this game, you've already played last year. You already know those players and the way they run their routes if they're receivers or how the offensive line is protecting. They just won the Joe Moore Award, by the way, which is probably a bad thing because the last 2 years Michigan won it and they lost. So maybe that's a curse. But how the offensive line is going to block, where are the players on defense, what is that movement, what's the little tell they have? You've already played them in a game. You watch the film on them now. You're doing it again this year. How have they gotten better? Where are they at? This is going to be that kind of battle on both sides because you had this bowl game a year ago. You've already done a lot of this prep work. Obviously, the last time Texas won a national championship was Vince Young in one of the probably greatest college football games of all time. Washington has never won an outright national title. They won a split title in the 90s. They've not won an outright title. That's a big deal. They 0-1 in their playoff appearances. They got beat by Alabama a few years back. So can the Pac-12 get a breakthrough in this situation and get themselves in a national championship game picture? It's been a while since Oregon and Ohio State faced off at the very beginning. So pressure's on Penix Jr. Had a great showing in the Pac-12 title game. Receivers were there, ran the football very effectively. But I liked how you mentioned the Texas defensive line having a bunch of dudes. Sweat is an absolute monster. I'm not going to put him on a Jalen Carter level, but he is a difference maker in the middle of the field for Texas. And he allows the linebackers to flow. He allows the pass rush to get home. And how is he going to have an impact? And how is Washington going to be able to account for him? Because Oregon's defense, Utah's defense is great. They don't have a guy like Sweat in the middle of that defense like Texas does. Texas defense is definitely, as a whole year, has been improved compared to what they've been in the past. They're 13th nationally in points allowed, average 17.5 a game. They're 23rd in total yards allowed per game with 321. They are allowing 240 passing a game, so maybe you can get them in the passing game. They're 4th in the nation in rush yards allowed. Nobody runs the ball in Texas. They only give them 80.8 yards a game. Only comparison of teams that Washington's already played, they played Utah and they were 5th at 84.5, and Oregon at 12th at 97.5. Versus Utah, they ran for 125 and 3.8 yards a carry. And the two games versus Oregon, they ran for 99 and 157. So those two other defenses that have been sort of in that same top 15 ranking, they've run very effectively against. Can they do it versus Texas? That is going to be the big one because throwing the ball is great. The pass rush maybe eventually gets after you. If you can run the football, you can keep that vaunted and that very talented Texas offense on the sideline, and you can dictate the pace of the football game and be a little more physical. If you cannot own the line of scrimmage, eventually that pass rush could get home to Penix Jr. Those windows get a little tighter. How that game sort of plays out. Again, back to the Michigan, Alabama breakdown. Line of scrimmage football game. Texas, Steve Sarkisian has built this team just under the protege that he learned from Alabama and learned from Nick Saban. Line of scrimmage, line of scrimmage, line of scrimmage, whether it's offensive or defensive line. How is that going to come into play in this football game? Is Sweat going to be a difference maker in the middle? Is that Texas offensive line going to give Ewers time to throw the ball? And you also mentioned Adonai Mitchell. He has 4 playoff games under his belt. He has 4 touchdowns, and 2 of them were very, very clutch touchdowns. I'm just going to mark it right now. He's catching 1 touchdown in this ball game, keeping the streak alive. And I think Texas is different. I've said it for the entire year. On August 31st, and I made my 4 playoff picks, I put Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, and Georgia. I hit on 2 of them. Obviously, Michigan and Texas are in. And I think Texas is not the normal Texas they have been in the past. They are going to have the talent in this football game to get it done. I think they are ready for this moment, and they are going to find a way to win this football game and get a rematch with Alabama in Houston, Texas for the national title. Texas will win this ball game in New Orleans late on New Year's Day night. It's going to be an interesting game, but I think they're going to win big. I don't think Washington will be able to handle the 4 quarters. I think Texas was going to be a tight first half, and they will pull away in the second half just because of the line of scrimmage. That will start wearing on that front for the Washington Huskies, and eventually they will fade away. Texas big, and they will meet Alabama in Houston for the national championship.
Fresh, my pick, I'm having the debate as I'm sitting here, and I had some notes in here, and I keep thinking, I've changed my pick back and forth. Do I pick with my head or do I pick with my heart? Is really the question I'm asking myself. Because at the start of this year, one of the things I said is that there's part of me that because this became the last year of the Pac-12, how great would it be to see the Pac-12 go out on top? And there's just a part of me that really would just love to see that happen. And that's where my heart comes in. Like, and that's not against Texas. There's no knock against Texas. If Washington was playing the Wolverines, if they were playing the Tide, I would be saying the exact same thing about the Washington Huskies right now. My heart wants me to go I want to pick Washington. Pick Washington just for your heart for it, just because it would just be as we've talked throughout this podcast, every time you guys listen to me, I love stories. I love a good story within a game. And I think the idea of Washington going out on top is just such a great ending to the story of the season, especially of a year like 2023, where there's not been a dominant team. There's not been that one team that's on a march, or there's not these 2 teams that are just on the march to the national title game. And then there's everyone else playing college football out there. This has been a year where I can legitimately say we have parity in college football right now, which is a great thing. It's entertaining to watch. It makes weeks and weeks go by where there's so many great games out there. And that's the thing that Fresh and I have talked about from day one of this podcast. This is not a episode where we only talk about the games the big time matchups in the South or in the Midwest or in the North. We were going to look at great games coast to coast. We were going to look, if there's a great matchup game in the Mountain West, we were going to talk about a great matchup game in the Mountain West. We didn't care. And I think that this is a great matchup game. This is a great story game. This is a great matchup game. Now, my heart is telling me to pick Washington in this football game. My head, my analytical brain, my reasonable brain is telling me that Texas is going to really take an opportunity in this one. Quinn Ewers is really showing why he was such a highly rated prospect coming out of high school. That 70% completion rate, almost 71%, is absolutely phenomenal. And it really does help having A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy to throw to. Sanders, the tight end, is a beast. He does not get enough credit because I think that people will look and say, like, hey, he's only got 2 touchdowns. Man, did you guys watch the kid play? Like, that kid is a monster at the tight end position. He just got 2 wide receivers who are going to vulture some of those touchdowns over there. And then I think we would be remiss to not talk about, like, they have a linebacker who's one of their leading tacklers this year in Hill that is a freshman and has been absolutely dominant in really making that Texas defense. Really like him a lot too here. My head is telling me to take Texas because Texas is on paper to me the better team. If you want to know, guys, I'm gonna go say Texas I got them by a touchdown in this game. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think Texas is going to win in a shootout and win by a touchdown in it. My heart is saying Washington by a last-second field goal that puts them up like a 38-35 type of game or a 37-38 type of game where it is a 1 or 2 point victory. So I'm split in there. That's where I'm standing at because my heart would say pick Washington for giggles just because you'll love the story. So I guess that would be my pick, but I really say my head is saying Texas by a touchdown, but man, it'd just be such a fun story.
With Texas going to the SEC next year, if Texas and Alabama met for the title, people will be so mad. The fury on message boards and Twitter and TikTok and Facebook and whatever, YouTube, people will be so mad that, again, another SEC basically. At this point, you might as well put Texas in the SEC. One of those 2 teams win a national championship would make everybody just furious.
All right, Fresh. So real quick, before we close out this one, not who you think is going to win, but let's call this get your popcorn ready type of matchup. Not who you think, but you would say this would be the most enjoyable matchup to watch for the national title game. Doesn't necessarily mean it's got to be reasonable. What would be your most entertaining?
I'm sorry, I can't put Michigan would not be entertaining. It'd be boring and having to hear the whole Harbaugh storyline. So Michigan's completely disregarded, taken out. Alabama, Texas would have obviously these tremendous storylines of a rematch for his only loss, blah blah blah. An Alabama Washington game would have storylines because it's the Pac-12 SEC matchup. But I think Alabama, Texas, 2 uber massive brands. Storylines, can an assistant beat the head coach? Can Saban get revenge and complete the revenge tour? Because if he does that, he'll have beaten everybody who beat him last year and then beat the team that beat him this year in a rematch, sort of selling all scores. I think that would be the greatest item. And also a reminder to Texas, hey, you're joining the SEC, but it's still Alabama's league for right now.
See, there's a part of me that really would love a Wolverines-Huskies matchup.
You would.
And not just for other reasons. It would just be because I would be rooting so it would make my rooting like I said, my heart roots for the Huskies right now in this one, just because I want to see the end of that story. It would just be like if that's how the story ended. For me.
But would you also want it because if Michigan did win it and then had the national title vacated 3 years from now, and just enjoying that moment in the sun when that gets taken away?
Fresh, if
it got taken away.
I did not think about that. That is a new thought that has entered my brain.
I spoke with your dad, and he was like, you know what? I have no problem if Michigan wins because then my son-in-law will get to experience the championship, and then I'll get the last laugh when it gets taken away.
Right. That's an interesting one. I did not think about that. We'll save that conversation for if they do make the national title game. It will give me time to think about that. I just said like it'd be great to see. That's how I love the end of the story for. And again, I would be cool with a Washington, Alabama. I really would love to see Washington in the national title game. No offense to Texas, because I think Texas is a great team. And I think Texas versus either one of those teams would be a great matchup as well and really fun to watch. I would love to see I love to see a rematch between Texas and Alabama. I think casual fans other places won't love that matchup because, it's again staying in the South, but it is what it is. Like, but TV viewership is important. Like,
Oh,
again,
yeah.
it really is for the health of this sport. While some people are like, oh, it doesn't matter and stuff. Guys, last year's TCU Georgia national title game, unless you were a Georgia fan, you turned that game off. Like, you did not watch it.
I
And
don't think parents of TCU players watched after the first quarter.
right. And so that's the rough thing about this thing. So, Fresh, it's a great one. I can't wait for us to talk about the national title game. Hey, folks, before you leave here, before you click off, hit that subscribe button on your way out. Hit the like, comments. Leave us a comment in the comment section. Tell us we don't know anything about Texas or Alabama or whatever football game you want to tell us we don't know what about. Or tell us that we're geniuses. That doesn't happen very often. But maybe someday someone will tell us that we're geniuses in the comment section. I like it. The only one I got to give Fresh credit for. The Notre Dame Duke game almost called it to the T. Go back and check it out. It's still in there. Guys, check out spinballsports.com. We got a lot of stuff coming. We have a lot of cool stuff planned for the new year. We're going to talk about the national title game, but we're also going to shift over to the NFL playoffs because, it's football to talk about. And then we get ready for draft season and the return of the hostile takeover. March Madness, we love the tournament just as much as you guys do. Guys, I told you at the beginning of this, there's very little offseason, so make sure you go to spinballsports.com. Always going to be some content over there to check out. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. I can't believe this is where we are at the end of the football season. It feels like just yesterday
Blur.
we were doing our top 25 preview. But guys, we're not going anywhere. We'll be back no matter what for y'all. So make sure you subscribe. Leave us that 5-star review because you guys know Fresh and I, we're those 5-star prospects. And Fresh, that's all I got right now. Happy New Year, man. You got a New Year's resolution?
New Year's resolution, be better than I was the year before.
Look at you all classy like that.
But hey, everybody, enjoy the games. Enjoy time with family. Hope we have a safe and happy new year. 2024 will be here before we know it. We get to do this thing all over again. And can't wait. With that, bye, y'all.